So it isn't, they are seeking to eliminate whatever Kurds are there and others, but their major focus is on get rid of the Christian community, get rid of the Christian community, much like they did in Lebanon with the influence of the Palestinians that Americans demonstrate for. They did a pretty good job of eliminating almost all of the Christians in Lebanon, killed them or sent them running. So now they're doing it ongoing. We have some video of a man beating Christians on the side of a road. Takes you back to 2,000 years ago, doesn't it? And when after we interview Bernie Kerik, who's coming up very shortly, I'll give you a little biblical and historical context to this. But the fact is that the new regime in Syria, which is a terrorist regime, and the guy in charge is listed, I think, still as a terrorist. He tried in the last 2 to 3 years to say he wasn't working with the terrorists any longer. I don't know. I mean, Biden people may have pulled this terrorist designation or may not have. I have to say, even for the Biden people, there was real concern as to whether this guy had really, do I want to say converted? I guess. How about we got the answer, okay? He's killing people left and right, but he's particularly focusing on Christians. You will not see that in the New York Times, because the New York Times is anti-Catholic, it's anti-Christian, it's anti-religion, it's anti-God. I mean, every one of those people on the editorial board knows that they're smarter than God. And do you know that was Marx's major flaw? He thought he was smarter than God and very much like Satan, the angel who rebelled against God. I'm not making it up, babes. The idiot left-wingers would know because they don't read Marx. But Marx was a Satanist, as well as a pervert and a disgusting human being. And that's the guy they follow. Now, when Bernie comes on, we're going to be talking about a very, very serious situation, a terrible thing. A 27-year-old police detective in Newark, New Jersey, was assassinated by a 14-year-old in Newark. And here's Joseph Azcona. Shall we show Joseph what a fine-looking young man?
Bringing up Commissioner. Yep. We'll put a picture of while we bring on the committee. There it is. All right, there he is. And then here's Commissioner Kerik is joining us right now.
Bernie?
Hey, Mayor, how are you?
Mayor.
Bernie, how are you?
I'm good.
Did you you got back to New Jersey safely?
I'm back. I got back last night, and I'll be here a couple of days. And I'll be going to the funeral on Friday for Azcona.
Oh, is it on Friday for Detective Detective Azcona? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, tell us what this is. A 14-year-old who killed him. A 14-year-old.
Yeah, there was a group of 4 or 5 kids. They were posting things on Instagram relating to guns that they had in their possession. The Intel squad in Newark, a couple of Intel detectives saw it, showed up at the scene where these kids were. And as the detectives went to exit the vehicle, this young kid, 14 years old, began firing. I mean, they didn't even know it was coming. Azcona was shot in the head and probably died instantly. The other detective wound up in the hospital, shot, I think, 3 times.
Oh, my.
But he did return fire, and the 14-year-old was hit during the gun battle. Did not succumb to wounds, unfortunately, in my opinion. But you know, he'll be going to trial for murder.
Now he gets tried as a juvenile, doesn't he, in New Jersey?
He does. You know, Jersey state law has you can't be tried as an adult under 15 years old. But I understand there are conversations between the Bureau, possibly in DOJ, to look at this case. I mean, when you think about it, they were using the phone, Instagram, technology to promote their crimes. That's a federal crime. I'm sure there's other things on there as well that could relate to federal crimes. This happened during the course of committing those crimes. I think there's justification for DOJ, and you would know better than I do, but I
Yep.
think there's justification for DOJ and the FBI to look at it in that way. And if so, then they can take him through the federal system. I just think what's happened is, it's reflective of what's happening in many of these cities where kids don't have father figures, where kids, they jump on this thug life, this gangster life, and they want to be gangsters. In the end, no matter whether Ascona died or didn't die, it doesn't make any difference at this point. He will not die in vain. That kid's going to be held accountable.
Good.
And we should send a message to every other thug out there that wants to attack, assault, engage in violence with the police officers of the community that we're going to win. We're going to be victorious. And, I take this win a little more personal than most because my son knew him. Joe teaches at the Firearms Training Academy. He's,
He's a chip off the old block.
yeah, he said this, honestly, Mary, he said this kid was a good kid. And I talked to the director of the Newark PD today. And a couple things I want to tell you. One, he said this kid, Ascona, was a cop's cop. He said, there's guys out there that take the job for the benefits, for the money, for the glamour, the glory. He said this kid took the job because he wanted to do the job. He wanted to be a cop. He said he was a damn good cop, number one. Number two, I found out that Kash Patel, the FBI director, actually called the chief, called the director, spoke to him, offered him his assistance, the assistance of the Bureau. I understand that Cash also called the detective, the surviving detective, called him in the hospital. This is a
Difference.
change of fate with regard to the Bureau and the communications with locals. This is the director of the FBI
Wow.
calling a local and municipal police department personally. So it's, I was happy to hear it. And I tell you, it sends a hell of a message to the field officers, the guys in the field. My son heard about it from the union. The union heard about it from the other cops that were in the hospital. And it spread throughout the department like wildfire. So I thank the director for
Yeah, you're
being
giving me
there for these
goosebumps with
guys.
that one, with Cash doing that. I mean, how many of these did you and I do together at hospitals, Bernie?
No,
Let's not
exactly.
even say, I mean, when we go to the hospital, tragically, probably more die than survive, but it's traditional, to go there, the mayor and the police commissioner. But the director of the FBI usually doesn't call.
Well,
I
hey,
think
Mayor,
send a
listen,
message.
I think I've probably buried more cops than just about any chief or commissioner in the country.
Oh, sure.
And I gotta tell you, I never got a personal phone call from the director, and I can assure you that the director never called any of my family members of the deceased. So, listen, that is what it is. But
No,
I
we
give
both
Cash
know
an enormous
Cash.
amount of credit.
We both know Cash, and I would say very comfortable with two reasons. One, his own personal identification with law enforcement, and that's the
That's
most
right.
important. It comes from the heart. But
Yeah,
second, it does wonders for the relation. Like you said, your son and all the cops are talking about it. Now,
that's right.
there's an antagonism to start with between the locals and the FBI. And the
Right.
FBI has to bridge that to get the information they need.
Right.
And when they do it successfully, which they've done at times, it's brilliant. And when they don't, well, you get murders that take place, like the one in Boston with the marathon. So
I have to tell you, Mayor, Cash said from the beginning, before he was ever nominated, before he was confirmed, he talked about the relationship between locals and state police and the FBI and how it should be repaired and fixed and how it should work. And we had these discussions about how we brought intel together and other agencies from outside to bring them into the NYPD. That was his mission when he got there. And, he's only been there a short time, but he's definitely standing by his word. And I'm gonna, I guess I could say this, he has a foundation, or had. He was the chairman of a board of a foundation. There was a cop killed in Georgia about a month ago, right before he was confirmed. And the foundation, under Cash's advisement, sent that family a grant to help them with the funeral expenses. He's all over this relationship building stuff, and I'll tell you, it's a real change of pace for the bureau. I think it's going to benefit them greatly.
Yeah, it's a great,
and it's going to benefit every
brilliant.
municipal and state police organization.
Well, I'm sure your relationship and advice to him had something to do with it, Bernie. I want you to take a minute, because I talk about it all the time, and I think half the people believe me and half don't. Just tell people the percentage in which you reduce. Before he was police commissioner, he was without doubt the best correction commissioner in New York or anywhere, because he took Rikers Island, which was the example of the most violent prison in America, and he didn't make it safe. He made it safer than the streets of New York. Tell him the percentage by which you brought down violence, and don't be shy.
Well, listen, Mayor, I actually wrote an op-ed piece. It's funny you mentioned this. I wrote an op-ed piece today. It's going to go into Newsmax tomorrow,
Oh,
and
good.
it's about
We'll
the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta that you
Oh,
know
the
quite
one where
well.
I'm going to go when they convict me in Atlanta. And
Right,
President, I'll
yeah.
be there with the president. Would
Well,
you advise
Saturday-
us? Would you advise the president and I on how we could set up like accommodations in the prison?
Saturday evening, they had a deputy stabbed in the neck.
Oh no!
And about 4 or 5 days before that, they had a suicide. I don't know what, I forget off the top of my head what number it is. The jail is completely overwhelmed with violence, mental illness.
Isn't it run
kinds of problems.
by the federal government somehow, or overseen by the federal government?
The federal government, I had a conversation with the sheriff about a week ago that is responsible for the jail. His problem is he doesn't have Rudy Giuliani there to give him the support and the funds he needs to do the job. He has a board of county commissioners.
Oh my God! Probably one of the most crooked counties in America.
In one of the most crooked counties in America, they just refuse to give him the funds, the resources, the staffing that he needs to do the job. But that being said, I know what it takes.
Of course,
and I told him in my conversations with him and what I wrote, my success in reducing violence, reducing overtime, reducing assaults on staff was because I had the resources and the funding to do the job I had to do. And that came from you. You need leadership that understands how important.
Well, thank you, Bernie, but this isn't about me. It's about you. And I had a lot of people I gave the resources to, and a lot of them did a great job. Nobody did anything better than what you did. 90% is the percentage by which you reduce violence. And by the way, if you don't believe me, I will play eventually over the next week or so the two pieces on 60 Minutes to hit the hit job. They went to Rikers Island before he and I were in office, and they said Rikers Island, worst prison in the world, or America, however they exaggerate it. So now they want to do another one 10 years later, and Bernie's there at this point as the commissioner. And he allows 60 Minutes to come in. I went crazy. I called up Bernie. You're nuts. These guys are hitmen. He said, "Don't worry, boss. Don't worry, boss." Well,
you know what, Mayor?
Worried. The boss worried until it came out, and he turned them all around. Biggest turnaround in corrections history. It actually is 90%. It's really,
Yeah,
they're
it
not
was,
making believe.
It was pretty funny. If you recall when Mike Wallace, and I
It was
was
Mike.
I
It
was
was
pretty,
Mike. I thought he's coming there to crucify me
I
through
was
you.
scared to death. I thought, I've watched this guy crucify kings and presidents and
Oh,
queens.
and they were after me because I was then, we had all the successes. He's going to run for president and a Republican.
Right.
And they finally figured out I was a Republican.
He
As soon as
said
they
to me,
figured out
he
I was a
said,
Republican, they really hated me.
he told
Then-
me privately on the phone, he says, if you have any balls, you will do this. He says, because if it's really what you say, if it's really what was written about in the New York Times, if there's really a 93% reduction
93.
on inmate violence, I will see it. And I said, okay, let's do it. And you know what was crazy is he would say, I told him, you can have open access. You tell me where you want to go, I'll get you there. So he would call us at night and say, I want to go to, I want to see the baby nursery. And then he'd get to the gate the next morning and go, no, I changed my mind. I want to go see solitary confinement.
Yeah.
So he tried his best, but in the end, he compared 1990 to 1998 and basically came away saying this is the first time in the history of the country that anyone has ever tamed Rikers.
Well, I saw it several times before in the 80s. But then when I was mayor, I went back on New Year's Day, 1995. I used to visit police stations and firehouses, and I visit Rikers Island on Christmas Day, bring them cookies, and New Year's Day. And I decided I wanted to go into solitary. Now, who was the commissioner then?
Abate.
Yeah, I know. We don't want to say what happened to him, but hey, you make some mistakes.
Chambry was the commissioner.
Oh, Chambry. Oh, yeah. The poor guy lived in Westchester because he had a special child. But okay, and nobody could match this guy you're looking at right here. I went in and they started booing at me, calling me all kinds of names. They didn't throw anything, but it was disgusting.
Yeah.
But when I went into the Fulton County jail, so I want you to be nice to these people, to get photographed and fingerprinted. Remember, you organized my security? Day before Trump, it was sort of like a test case. I got a standing ovation from two groups of prisoners. And they were yelling out what a hoe Fanny was, but I won't say anything. Well, Bernie, we want to be back in touch with you this week about New Jersey and other things. A lot of stuff going on. So we can get you?
All right, Mayor.
All right.
Anytime.
Yeah. Great police commissioner, got us through 9/11. Great servant of America in Middle East. Maybe his greatest contribution was 9/11. I think probably, maybe, but he's done others since then, including going to Iraq right after the war was over, when he was sitting there running with me a security business that was one of the top consulting firms in the world at that time. And he was finally making a lot of money. And he said, boss, I'm going to Iraq. I'm going to see if I can help with the police there. Came back disillusioned as hell. Disillusioned because they didn't utilize whatever they could salvage of the local bureaucracy that, I know, to simplify, that would know how to run the railroad. In the excess of zeal to get everyone connected to Saddam out, they got everyone connected, even this much, to Saddam. And nobody could run the railroad to put on the electricity, much less police the streets. So he had to train MPs to do it, which meant you were losing on the other end. So after some time with Bremer and some battles about how wrong this was, he finally, but he did spend 9-10 months. He could have been killed easily. I used to talk to him on the phone, 2-3 times a week, because I needed advice about the business. And I would hear gunfire in the background. I'd say, Bernie, what's that? And he would very calmly, I don't know. He mentioned the gun he thought it was. I said, well, is this practice? He said, no, they're trying to kill somebody. I said, well, should you get there? He said, no, my guy said, yeah, don't worry. And then every once in a while, he would say, well, I got to interrupt. You hear all this noise, and you hang up the phone. You never saw a more courageous guy than that guy right there. And he saved my life. And I'll tell you that story about 9/11. I have probably done it, but you may not have heard it. So the tariffs, right? The tariffs are being attacked all over by the cognoscenti. Cognoscenti mean the intelligent ones, not you and me. We're just stupid little pygmies, you know. We don't know shit. We don't know anything. These tariffs are terrible. These tariffs are awful. It's going to mean inflation and the inflation you're seeing right now, ladies and gentlemen, has nothing to do with Trump. It takes a while for economic policies to affect anything with the market. The market can get affected by anything, by a prediction that they like or don't like. Like if somebody were to give a speech tomorrow saying, we're going to go into recession, and there was some degree of following for that person, the market would go down for a couple of days. And when it turned out to be wrong, the market would go right back up and higher. So the market is about, at times, as intelligent as the brainwashed people. Brighter because it goes on forever, and then things calm down, and then they can really assess what's going on. Now, the impact on the economy where some prices are going up has a lot to do with the fact that this has been going on for years, and it takes more than 2 months to turn. It took me, I'll give you my own history. When I became mayor of New York, we had 10.5% unemployment. We had $1.something billion deficit, and we have to have a balanced budget. I didn't get to print money, we had 1.1 million people on welfare, and the city was about where it is now in terms of people who wanted to leave. If you took a poll, about 70 or 80% wanted to leave. It was wonderful. The New York Times did this a couple of days before my inauguration. If I was somebody else, I just would have resigned. It said 70 to 80% of the people in New York think New York's going in the wrong direction, even with the election of Giuliani. 78% want to live somewhere else. 60% don't trust the police. They wouldn't report a crime to the police because it wouldn't be investigated. Yeah, there wasn't a good, basically it was a poll saying the city is at an end. Now this is a city that had been on the front cover of Time magazine, Big Apple, rotting of the Big Apple. So let's take it from the words of the communist pigs. They believed it was the rotting of the Big Apple. Now they had been running it into the ground. They're the reason it was rotting, but they never will say that. I knew I was going to turn it around, and I knew I needed patience. And when I finished my first year in office, there's nobody that thought I'd be reelected, except me. I did pray a lot because, you know, sometimes it would take longer than 3 years. And if it took longer than 3 years, I would be footnote. Well, the second year, 95, the really good things started to happen. Even by the end of 95, though, I was probably not going to get reelected. Democrats all lining up, even some Republicans in the primary. 96 was a turnaround year, symbolized by the Yankees winning the World Series for the first time in two decades. Okay, I used that as the thing that got the spirit up. But of course, that the fact is, by 96, the city's economy was doing better than it had been doing in about 30 years. And by 97, it was soaring. And of course, the ultimate, I don't remember what they were when I went into re-election as opposed to left. But I mean, you know, crime went down between 60 and 70%, depending on where. It went down in the Black community more than any other. Murders went down in the 60, 65% category, higher in the poorer communities. The 1.1 million people on welfare went down to 500,000, with all but 100,000 of the people taken off having jobs through workfare. So I could go on and on. The point of it is not that. The point of it is it took a year for that to be known even to me, to be provable by me. And it took about a year for them to accept it because it continued. This will be faster. It took Trump the first time about 8 months. It took Reagan about a year and a half, and then Morning in America. So I'm not worried about it at all. I just want you to understand it. And I want you to understand that these tariffs, it's ridiculous how they react to them like they necessarily are going to happen. Please react to them when they happen, not in anticipation. Fool. You're a fool if you react to it in anticipation. You're going to lose money. So how many people reacted to Mexico and Canada tariffs? Right now, as we sit here, there are no Mexico and Canada tariffs. Yesterday in Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the president of Mexico, took a major rally at a place called Zocalo, right outside of Mexico City. Bernie and I, by the way, went into Mexico City once on a private plane at 4 a.m, maybe 3 a.m, so we could view it without the tremendous crowds, because we did a crime reduction program for Mexico City that really worked well until we were kicked out because of politics. And so I know Mexico City. I know this Zocalo. This is used for left-wing communist protests. And I know that we say she's a socialist and left-wing like we did about her predecessor, not her predecessor, but a couple of the president. But they really are, I don't know if they're definitely a Marxist, whether they're communist or not, but they definitely embrace a South American Marxist view. But like her boss, Obrador, she's a highly practical person. I knew that Trump would be able to work with Obrador because I did, and Bernie did in 2003 and 2004, 2005. So they had booked this sometime earlier. There's going to be a big protest against Trump for imposing the tariffs. Instead, do you know what she celebrated yesterday? 2 months of no tariff. And the head of the unions, who has to be well, I shouldn't say that, but the good chance, he certainly is very left-wing and would be a guy that generally would despise Trump. He made the following comment at this great celebration, which was a cheerful festival of the good relationships between Trump and Sheinbaum. Fortunately, dialogue and respect between both nations prevailed. So now, if you started selling things and going crazy because of the impact of the tariff on Mexico, I'm sorry, you lost a lot of money. And if you couldn't figure out that there was a better than even chance that was a tactic, then you are an easily persuaded moron, no matter whether you run a financial firm or you don't, or what the hell degree you have or whatever. Now you go to Canada. Canada
Drug
is
consumption in that.
Well, there's her right there. Do you want to show her?
Video.
Okay, show the video. She's quite a success.
Drug consumption in that society for humanitarian reasons, Mexico.
This audio is kind of a lot of non-audio in this, but anyway.
Well, I mean, so you see the B-roll, and you saw the fentanyl there. That's one of the things at the core of this. And in the case of Mexico, it's probably more important than the financial aspect of this. In the case of both Mexico and Canada, we do import a lot of things from them. So if you put a tariff on them, they're going to cost more in the United States. And we export less. So that hurts us in one way. It empowers us in another. If we put a tariff on them and they put a tariff on us, before we even consider the impact of our massive economy and their middle-level economies, which means we could outlast them, immediately the impact is 2 to 1 on them. So they send 40 billion to us and we send 20 billion to them. So we're charging 20% on 40 billion. They're charging 20% on 20 billion. That's half. Okay. So we make double for our treasury to start with. It does mean our citizens have to pay more. However, because we're the largest market and the most desirable market in the world, not China, by a lot, to everyone but the communist liars in the New York Times and whatever. We have alternatives they don't have. What country could Mexico export to that's richer than the United States? How many countries can we buy from where we could make a deal possibly as good or better than Mexico? 20. Might it be more expensive because of transport? Maybe not. And if it's just as expensive, it doesn't affect our economy. Now, I'm not an economist. I just have a very good brain and I have common sense. They have very good brain, but no common sense. And they're also ideologues and they hate Trump. So they're going to interpret everything against it. I'm not saying tariffs are all good and all positive. I tend to be more of a free trader. Although I understand that free trade means fair trade. Free trade is not, they have a 20% tariff on us and we have nothing on them. Free trade is no tariff by them or us, and let's fight it out. Who's better? That's free trade. Not they get to define the rules of the game, and a basket for them is worth 7 points and a basket for us is worth 1 point. That's not a basketball game. That's a con job hijacking. So would you please look at what's going on in Mexico? Would you please also look at the fact they put 10,000 troops near the border, that we have got back, remain in Mexico like that without any negotiations, that she's doing everything she can to reduce fentanyl coming into the United States because she doesn't want our troops over the border, which everyone says, oh, that's terrible that he's threatening that. Well, I'm not going to say that she's doing it just because he's pushing her. I think, and I'll give the best interpretation of Claudia. I don't know her. I knew her predecessor really well. And I tend to think I'm seeing the same thing. Claudia wants to do this, but she needs to be empowered. And given her reaction, which is so positive, and the fact that she moves on a dime, this is something she's been planning to do and waiting for somebody to push her into it. So then she can say, I got to tell you, when Bernie and I went there several times, one of the major things we had to do is create a police department because the entire police department was corrupt. And I had a really ingenious plan to do it, and it worked for a while until they fired us because the mayor was becoming Obrador was getting too popular. Here I was making a left-wing communist mayor popular by reducing crime. So the president fired us because he was successful. You got to understand Mexico. So my expenses and my company and Bernie and the other groups we brought were all paid by the wealthiest business people, which was headed by Carlos Slim, the wealthiest business people in Mexico because they couldn't live there anymore, Mexico City. So we came up with this great plan to go find individual police officers who were honest, which was hard, and let's begin with a special force of them focusing on the most important crimes. And then we'll build out from there an honest police department. Now, when I did the same work in Colombia, I didn't have to do that because they already had a very, very, if not completely honest police department, nothing like that, and a very, 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 very motivated police department with a lot of morale. Mexico had a deflated police department. So Bernie and I had to. When we did that, Obrador, as we introduced what you would call conservative right-wing things like higher penalties and no bail and stuff like, he would put them in effect. Remember, he's a socialist, and he'd blame it on us, sort of. He was like, we brought him in and everybody paid for them. We got to follow what they said. I found him to be considerably more of a patriot than the conservative who was running the government, who fired us because he was worried about what happened with Obrador. How about worried about the people that are dying? And we cut that by 35%. So I think she is doing what she wants to do with Trump giving her the political room to do it. It's hard to understand for these jackasses that just hate Trump. But this. If you're going to go tariffs, you got to do success, failure. And then you got to see which wins. Well, this is success. There has been no tariff. All this has been done by carrying a big stick back here, but never having to use it. Same thing with Canada, less so. And Canada is not, the leadership of Canada is not anywhere near as shrewd as the leadership of Mexico. In fact, they've just replaced one jackass with another. If they pick it up, they would take Canada. And Canada depends on us even more than Mexico, in the sense that Mexico has, at the core, a more vital economy. Not that Canada couldn't. Canada has the resources that should make it a very rich country. It has the political leadership of a ninth grade class. But in any event, still no tariffs, and we're getting a lot more concentration on illegal immigration. And the more we can keep that under control, the more our economy is going to grow and the more Americans are going to work. That'll take 5-6 months, maybe more. That's right there. It's going to happen. I can predict it. But second, as far as we can tell, and I don't want to rely on anything yet, since we're down to 300 a day as opposed to 11,000, it's got to be we're cutting the fentanyl down dramatically. Now, I'm going to check on that because the fentanyl does come in the spaces between the border crossings. And I am hoping, I'm sure, with Tom Homan, that we are policing that a lot better. Usually, one reflects the other. Trump has, as Bernie said, I mean, the FBI, Cash is really pushing it absolutely in the right direction. Trump has increased the scrutiny of it by restoring the private line between the FBI director and the president, which existed for many, many years. And maybe at one time with Johnson and Hoover was used for the wrong purposes. But
when did that go away, or why did it
probably
go away?
went away somewhere around Watergate with the idea that the president could manipulate. Well, we found out under Biden and Obama that the FBI could become the little mistress of the Democrat Communist Party without a private line.
Under Obama.
So
Before Trump.
maybe there should be proper accountability. I mean, it is the president's law enforcement agency.
Right.
And it should be used for his priorities, but his social priorities and his law enforcement priority. It should never be used for any political priorities. And if it is, the FBI director should go straight to jail. It should be a crime. It should be a crime for the president, any political figure, or the FBI to do anything for avowedly a political purpose. Now, the problem with that is it could be, and I know I suggested that off the top of my head. It could be a dangerous crime that could be interpreted the wrong way when you get a dictatorship like we had under the Democrats that crashed down and use fascist tactics on people like me and all my friends. So we may have to confine that to public accountability, to which the Democrats would never help. And I will tell you, under Cash Patel, it'll be done. It'll be done very effectively, and it'll be done very appropriately. And I want to thank Cash also for reaching out concerning that police officer. That's a beautiful thing to do. And you can't imagine in law enforcement, it's like the military. These are mostly, the overwhelming majority, they're wonderful people, highly patriotic. And something like this is showing that they're important, that their lives are important, is just as important as good direction and a reasonable salary. So let's take a short break and come back to America's Mayor Live. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers.
New York, Michigan. Sorry, one more.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live, and we were talking a bit about the market, and today was a brutal day for the market. A lot of people, and I think this is fair, attributing it to the panic over the tariffs. Which, look, I really respect the market and its long-term possibilities. I remember a very good friend of mine back in 2008. Who, because of the crash and the saying it was going to be like a depression, took all of the money out of an account that they had in the market, and they put it in the bank. And I really advised them to do half or a quarter. And they didn't. About 2 years later, they came back to me and said they had lost like 50% of it by doing that, because the market came back to the market came back to 3 times what it had been, or 2 times what it had been. So you look at the market long term and just calm down. Now, here's the problem. If you need the money right now, like you're buying a house or you're in debt and you need the money right now, well, that's a problem. And you only should be in the market with money that you can keep there for, you don't have to keep it there for life. That's great if you can. If you keep it there for life, you're going to be somehow a rich person. But even if I think you should give it a 2-year, I can't think of a time, maybe 3-year period. Something you don't need right now, and you can put it aside for 3 years. You're going to probably win big. Right now. In fact, this may be a great time. I'm not making any recommendations, haven't studied it enough, but this is usually the great time where really, really sharp people who make a fortune buy. The market has been unnaturally knocked down way below where it should be, because they are panicking over tariffs, because the left-wing media is panicking them over taxes. And my God, the left-wing media doesn't understand how to cross a street, much less tariffs. Do you realize that some of these tariffs they're reacting to haven't happened? In fact, most of them haven't happened. Some of them aren't going to happen. So if you sold, because if you had like investments and things you had to do with Mexico and stuff like that, and you sold those because there's going to be a tariff on Mexico, there is no tariff on Mexico. The same one we've always had. There may never be a tariff on Mexico. It looks to me like Shine is smart enough to make readjustments to use it to our benefit and ours. On the other hand, we got, I don't know what the left-wing party in Canada is. It sure as hell isn't intelligent. Trudeau, despite being a foolish-looking guy and acting guy, is a major jackass. The guy taking over is a big banker and who believes all this crap. If big bankers were terrific, we would never have any of this happening. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're guessing at it and saying it with lots of credentials that we now know are useless, like Ivy League education. And they just say it in a way that makes them sound, they use big words and descriptions, and they don't know shit. Because if they did, we wouldn't have these problems. And then when we get into a real problem, they go in the men's room and lock, or the ladies' room now, and lock up. And that's what they got in Canada. The guy they elected in Canada, he's a big bank guy. Wow. I don't know of any big bank guy that ever ran a country effectively. Look at the up and downs of banks. God, if governments ever went like that, we've been overthrown 150 years ago. So look at the tariffs really carefully and study them for yourself. So if we're talking about China, there could be tariffs. So if you've got investments that are sensitive to that, yeah, that was probably a good investment to get out of. But if you're looking at tariffs on even some of the European countries, I would give you different evaluations of which ones are going to happen, which ones are not. But they're not all going to happen. So don't react to them like, oh my God, they're all going to happen. And they're even factoring into their reaction, Mexico and Canada. Mexico has been held off for 2 months, and I think at least a month more for sure. Canada hasn't been put in effect yet. It is possible that the Canadian tariffs will go into effect. But now I want you to think long-term strategy for a minute. While this fool who's been elected in the primary by the Communist Party, or whatever you want to call it, the Socialist Party, the dumb party, the stupid party who thinks money grows on trees, the party that thinks there are 48 genders, the party that wants to chop up little children if a girl says I'm a tomboy, oh, okay, there go your breasts. And that's the party here. What do you think they know about the economy? Even a guy that's been the head of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, how the hell good are they doing? Horrible. They need a banker to run them. I mean, England's economy is probably just about like Canada's. And they got a prime minister who, should be working in the old Soviet Union. Starmer. Here's what could happen with Canada. One, they could borrow the strategy of Korea and make a lot of money for us and a lot of money for China. By, number one, cutting off the fentanyl. Number two, cutting off the illegal immigration. And number three, making sure that our tariffs are reciprocal. If they charge 10, we charge 10. If they charge 20, we charge 20. Get them all in line. That's simple fairness, and you can't have a free trading if you don't have equal conditions and you're not operating under the same rules. That isn't fair. That isn't a game. That wouldn't be fair in a game. And in many ways, unfortunately, economic trading is like a game. So here's my prediction on Canada. I would say 80% chance the Mexico tariffs don't happen in any major way. Just about an 80% chance that the Canadian tariffs will happen briefly, which means whenever Carney, the idiot who got elected, overreacts and Trump bangs him until he's thrown out of office, which will be very shortly. But before the end of the year, he'll be replaced by a guy who's ahead of him now by 8%. Used to be ahead of him by 20 until this tariff stuff started. But as the tariff stuff goes down, and they look at the substantive effect on the economy they live in, they're going to toss this guy out on his ass like they did with Fidel Castro's alleged illegitimate child. So by November or December, this will probably all get negotiated out between two conservative governments. So if you need to sell, I'm talking about financial instruments that are sensitive to the Canadian economy, right? And because you need the money in the next 6 months or 3 months or 2 months. Well, you probably, I don't know if you should get out now at the bottom, but you got to start thinking with your broker about how to get out. But if you can go beyond a year with that money, in other words, you can say, well, I got $100,000 in those stocks, and I don't need that $100,000 this year. Leave it there. Because if you sell now, you're going to sell low. And a year from now, the stock might be worth double. But it ain't going to happen long term with Canada. Now, European countries, we got to go one by one. China is a foregone conclusion. China is, gosh, if it's a tariff war, that'd be great. Could be a different kind of war. So that's my wisdom on it. Take it, leave it. But don't panic. Anybody who ever panicked because of the market got seriously hurt. They do this all the time, largely because it's an unthinking, big mass of easily reactive cowards. And then there are people who've made a fortune by just having balls. I mentioned the mass murder in Syria, correct, of Christians. I want you to know about that, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that and trying to get more information about it, like we did 2 years ago on the illegal aliens who were killing people in the United States, and the left-wing press was saying, "Oh, the man from Athens killed Athens, Georgia, killed Laken Riley." Yeah, Athens, Georgia, my backside, from Venezuela. They're doing the same thing here, and I see what they're doing. They're using the euphemistic term sectarian murders. Now, sectarian can mean anything. Anything can be a sect. It could be the local YMCA. It doesn't convey anything as to who the targets are. At least if it would say the Christians and the Druze and you'd get that 4 sects that are sect, SECTS, the less controversial description. It's only 4. And the impact on the Christians is about 10 to 1. So it's really the Christians. But they never will say that because the left-wing communist fear Christianity than any other religion because it's the most powerful, largest, richest. They'll kill everybody else. We know they kill Jews, and we know in certain places they kill Muslims. But and Muslims like to kill Christians and Jews, certain ones. So Columbia University. Oh, I think you're seeing pictures of the Christians. These are basically.
شد اللي حيلك ابو احمد يلا
I think he might have said.
يلا وان ينصركم الله فلا غالب لكم وإن تقاتلوهم يولوكم الأدبار.
I sure as hell don't know Arabic. So these are that's in the Alawite heartland, which is 90% Christian. Now, why is Syria Christian? Syria is Christian for a little while. We sure as heck aren't interlopers. Let's see if I can find this now. Let me see if I had it, and now I misplaced it, and it's annoying me, Ted.
That's right, Mayor. So is our audio good over there, Stephen? Yep. So, of course, these are reports coming out that hundreds of minorities, including Christians, are being killed in Syria as we speak. This, according to observers, since Thursday, more than 1,000 people, including Christian minorities and Alawites, of course, that's a sect in which Assad had belonged, have been killed. Now, again, this is from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, and anytime you see these organizations, right, you want to know what their angle is.
Yeah, whenever I hear that, I think communist and crooked.
Right. So, you know what the real situation is. We don't know.
Who
what the
said that?
videos are the videos, right? You can't.
Well, I just don't think.
Videos don't lie.
I don't think the prelates of the churches there would be lying, and they say that 1,000 people have been killed, and also this group has for how many years? Gosh Almighty, 1,000 years has killed Christians.
Right.
I mean, you see, this book is the Bible. Okay, there's a book called the Quran. In the Quran, if you read it, the whole thing, Muhammad tells them to kill Christians and Jews if they can't subject them to in any other way, to convert them or to have them pay extortion.
Right.
Muhammad, at the end of his career, not the end, the second half of his career, acted like the head of a mafia family. He'd go into a town. If he was Jewish, he'd grab the elders of the Jewish community, kill them, and then tell them convert. Or well, at first he'd say convert, and then he'd kill them. And then somebody, I guess, who had a little more of an opportunistic entrepreneurial spirit said, we can give them an alternative, convert or pay us tribute. Now, what that has to do with religion, you tell me, but pay us tribute. And you pay us tribute, we'll let most of you live, but we'll kill a couple for symbolic purposes and to keep you under control. What I am telling you is the absolute, unvarnished truth. For this, it doesn't matter for me. There's a couple of fatwas against me anyway. But 80% of the media in this country would not report that. It is right in the Quran. It's been there since the Quran was written, which would have been somewhere in the 7th century, 8th century. And it is practiced by a certain significant number of Muslim people. Not all of them. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Most Muslims are not. But the number that are terrorists is not a small number. Worse than that, the number who sympathize with the terrorists is a rather large number, as you could tell from the celebrations that took place after September 11, including in the country that we were just in, Bosnia, where the American State Department, even under Marco Rubio, favors the people who hate us against the people who love us. And among these extreme groups, did you go from bad to worse? No. You actually went from very bad to almost as bad. That would be here's the benefit of getting rid of Assad. You kicked the hell out of Iran by doing that. This group, which is Sunni and very, very dedicated Sunni. Now, they could change for money. Some Sunni groups do. But this group would like to see Iran destroyed because it's a Shiite community. It gets more complicated. Iran has bought off any number of Sunni extremists. So Hamas were Sunni extremists from the Muslim Brotherhood, and they became like that because they put aside the religious zealous part of it in favor of kill Americans and kill Jews. But at this point, this has deprived Iran of a surrogate in Syria. It's deprived Russia of a place in Syria, and they've left. So that's a plus. For the people of Syria, it just changes who gets killed. Now the Christians and the other religions get killed. Now, there aren't many Jews left. They've all been killed or run away. But there are other religions there other than Christian. Druze, the Kurds who are Muslim, but their own kind of Muslim, but mostly Christians. I'm telling you, it's like 10 to 1. So here's what it all goes back to. Talking about a Jewish Roman citizen who was a warrior. His name was Saul. At that time, there was a great persecution against the church, which was at Jerusalem. So that's the church established by Peter. And they were all, now they go on to say about the church, but they were all scattered abroad as well, throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria. And devout men carried Stephen to his burial and made great lamentations over him. As for Saul, he made havoc for the church, entering into every house and hauling men and women, committed them to prison. Therefore, they were scattered abroad, went everywhere preaching the word. And Philip went down to the city of Samaria and preached Christ unto them. And the people with one accord gave heed unto those things which Philip spoke, hearing and seeing the miracles which he did. And now they talk about the preaching of the apostles in the areas around in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem. And now they talk about Saul in the 9th chapter of the Acts of the Apostles. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, which is right in the heart of Syria, right? Present Syria. Letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Any of this way meaning followers of Christ. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecute thou me? And he said, who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Not the same meaning as we. They were like plant, never mind. and he trembling and astonished said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what they must do. And then, of course, he went into the city. Go thy way, for he is chosen vessel, meaning Saul, unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show them how great things that must be suffered in my name's sake. So Saul was converted from a massive persecutor of Christians to one who was going to carry the faith to the Gentiles, which was controversial. The question was, would the early Christians be Jews and carry the message to reform Judaism, or were they there to create a more universal religion? And Jesus had made clear in his preachings that it was a universal religion. But as they first started, they were simple fishermen, and they were basically doing the preaching in Jerusalem and in Rome. And Saul brought it to the rest of the world. And it's also, if you ever want to get into it, the distinction between the Roman Catholic Church, particularly the Latin Rite, and the Eastern Church, both Orthodox and Roman Catholic Eastern Rite. So we'll go into that. But those are the people who are getting slaughtered right now, mostly Roman Catholic Eastern Rite and Orthodox Christians, the Alawites, who have been great contributors to Syria over thousands of years, but have been subjected to, like the Jews, many persecutions. Ukraine, Elon Musk, being a businessman, made the point that I've made to you over and over again, and I want to make it clear, okay? Ukraine is a corrupt country. That doesn't mean the people of Ukraine are corrupt. The people of Ukraine are victims of that. Just like the people of China, 90% of them are communists. 90% of them are either people who have no particular ideology. I mean, they also have many religions, including Christian, and as you know, the Uyghurs in China, who are being eliminated as we speak, are Muslim. And you have the Falun Gong, which is not really a religion; it's a way of life. It's more like I think I'm right about this. It would be more like people who follow a healthy regimen for their bodies and their minds and meditate. And it is a very peaceful and beautiful set of beliefs, but it doesn't embrace homicidal atheistic communism, for which they've been slaughtered since they started in the late 1990s. Not only are they slaughtered, but the Falun Gong are used as the principal targets of organ donation. What that means is, if they can imprison them and they think they got a good heart for sale, or liver or kidney, they'll take it out, kill the person, throw the person away, and go sell it. What I'm telling you is the subject of any number of studies in England, in Italy. We kind of avoid that because we want to be nice to China. Who wants to be nice to China? Because they've infiltrated us. They've infiltrated us brilliantly for 50 years from the start of, I'm sorry, Henry, I loved you, but they really jerked you off big time. You never saw the point at which you should give it up. One could argue that the original opening to China was brilliant and terrific in defeating the Soviets. One could argue from the very beginning the Chinese had in mind making a sucker out of you. But for the first, until the fall of the Soviet Union, it had a certain practical sense, just in the same way the alliance with Stalin had a certain practical sense in the Second World War, or our talking to Putin has a certain amount of practical sense right now, even Z. But to not have the discipline to break it when you had to, like Roosevelt didn't have, and like Kissinger didn't have, and a lot of Republicans, the idea that we could convince China to give up communism by showing them the glories of capitalism didn't take into account their very, very different culture, their very different background, the intensity of their communist beliefs, which are much greater than Russia, and the intensity of their cruelty. Not the Chinese people, but this particular group. This is a group that used murder and torture more than any group in any ideology in the modern world. It destroyed many, many more of its own people than Hitler or Stalin or maybe not Stalin. It'd be a close call. And they definitely eliminated more of their own people than anybody else. Did they kill more people than Stalin? Well, that'd be a good study. It would just tell you why the overwhelming general sentiment and philosophy in our so-called great, completely failed universities is wrong. When people say, oh, socialism is a wonderful, they disregard the fact that socialism always results in massive violence, killing, and fascism. I made that point when the pandemic happened. I said, you can see the dictatorial side of all these socialist leaders. Who was I talking about? Andrew Cuomo, Willis, Newsom. All of them immediately just love being dictators. Or Lighthead in Chicago. I'll go get my hair done, but nobody else. Can't go to restaurants except Newsom. Cuomo did the same thing, but Cuomo added to it, getting all those dead people killed. But that was really just straight out New York bribery or New York pay for play. Gosh, they love that, pay for play. The biggest contributors to Andrew Cuomo was the nursing home unions and the nursing homes, rather. The nursing homes were not getting the money they thought they should be getting. The hospitals were making it, so get those old people there so we can collect. They're going to die anyway. Who cares? 15,000? That's a lot to have on your conscience, Andrew. And now, I don't want to get off the point, but I got to tell you this. You got to know this. I mean, one of the biggest reasons for all the crime in New York and many other places in Democrat, Soros, left-wing America is bail reform, letting people out of jail, reducing the age in which you could treat someone as an adult. So in New Jersey, it's at 15. In New York, I think it's at 17 or 18. So this murderer of the police officer will, unless they can find a way around it, get a private trial, and he'll get 20 years or less in jail for a cold-blooded killing of a 27-year-old police officer. And you don't think when he comes out, he's going to do it again. So Cuomo changed the bail law, changed the eligibility for being treated as an adult, and most importantly, change the parole laws. As a result of the man who wants to be mayor of New York and reform it and fix it. Now, he's going to reform it from all the things he did wrong to it. This is about as big a con job as a Democrat, leftist, or anyone capable of. The reason there is an increase in crime in New York is all to do with the legislation he passed. And he has a chance to say it was a mistake and I'll change it, except he said, because he is an ultimate bad man and doesn't care whether people die. Do you know how many people died because of him? The old people for sure. But I tell you over and over again, and I'm sure I could get a commissioner, not just Carrick, but Commissioner Kelly to agree. There are 6, 7, 8,000 dangerous criminals walking the streets in New York because of Cuomo's not requiring the fixing of bail for them or no bail because they're dangerous. Yesterday, he described that as a very humanitarian thing he did. Yeah, humanitarian for the murders and brutal and cruel to their hundreds and thousands of victims that would not have been dead had it never been Andrew Cuomo. Raises an interesting question, right? Well, we don't have to say better he not be born, but we can say better he not be in public office. Huh? We got a choice about that one. It was Mario and Matilda that birthed him. But I mean, that doesn't mean you got to make him mayor because of his name. I mean, the guy is disgraceful. The women thing, I don't know. The old people think, I know exactly what he did. 100% know what he did. He did it for his campaign contributors and because he doesn't have a soul, which is the same reason why he is lying now and saying that his bail reform was really great. He's actually smart enough to know it was a disaster, but politically he thinks he's not going to admit a mistake. There's no one except left-wing jerk-offs who don't realize that bail reform is at the key of the massive return of crime in Democrat America, because a lot of them followed it. Maybe worse than that were his change in parole laws. Do you know how many police murderers, killers, have been released since Cuomo was the governor and passed this law? People who murder, like this guy, who murdered a police officer. Some of the police officers I knew and families I loved and still do. 43. There are 43 cop killers walking around the streets of America because of Andrew Cuomo, who wants to be the next mayor. Are you crazy? My former constituents? I mean, you've done some crazy things. De Blasio, whoa, had communists written all over him, right down to his mother being one, right down to having who the hell has a honeymoon in Cuba? Either a communist or a complete moron. Well, he was both. Ruined the city. Reason Adams hasn't been able to fix it, too. He's left with a terrible situation because of de Blasio. And Adams has had a lot of the right ideas. It never had the courage to fight his destructive communist crooked party, which has been crooked even longer than communist. Been crooked since almost the beginning of the party as the party of slavery. There's probably the most disingenuous human being in New York, lying about his bail reform, that he still believes it was the humane thing to do. Go tell it to the thousands and thousands of black men who are dead because of it. Jackass, murderer. Because when you look at the murders that took place and the increase, 7 to 8 out of 10 have been black people, Andrew. Maybe that's one of the reasons you don't care. And the old people, well, they were just old. And you weren't going to let your campaign contributors get hurt. God forbid. The women, I don't know which ones are telling the truth and which ones are lying. And I do get really offended by your saying this is what Italian men do. Because I'm not sure I know what you did, but I sure know you're not the representative of Italian men. You're the representative of something really disgusting that goes back into the depths and history of your ridiculously corrupt political party. And your dad was a great man, but everybody that knew your dad, including his friends, said he made a big mistake with you. He took you in politics too early, and he made you the hitman. Are you going to vote for Cuomo or the homo? He denies it's him. Ed Koch went to his grave, certain it was him. And right now, Ed Koch would be on every television show, every radio show, and carrying signs saying, please don't put him in my old job. Don't ruin New York. This is a sick guy. I mean, I had many intimate conversations with Ed. He was my big friend, my big endorser, my great enemy at various times. We had big feuds. But I knew one consistent thing. He couldn't get along with Mario. That went back to their running against each other. However, the guy but he knew Mario was essentially an honest man. I do think he at times described him to me as the devil or things like that. And you know, I would take it with a grain of salt until I started seeing him operate as governor. I thought he'd be a good governor. I thought he'd be like, you know, take it to the middle. He pretended to do that, and he took it way out to the left. And now that he's gotten so many of my police officers killed, this guy doesn't belong in public office. Doesn't belong in New York. Elon Musk, who gets accused of being favorable to Putin, points out that if it wasn't for him, Ukraine would have no communication. He gave him Starlink when the Russians were able to compromise all their other systems. Russians don't know. Russians don't know what to do with Starlink. In fact, the reason why Biden left them there, the astronauts, is because the only one capable of really saving them is Elon. And of course, you know, Trump will use them, and Trump would have done it anyway because Trump has a soul, and Biden, like Cuomo, has no soul. So now he's called for U.S. sanctions against wealthy Ukrainians. Elon has. This is a very, very good thing to do because the oligarchs in Ukraine still control it, and they're crooked. There's nothing about that country that has been reformed by the little weasel who runs it. Now, the little weasel may or may not have been very brave in what he did, and may or may not been very strong in what he did and in holding off the Russians, or he may have sold out I don't know. I do know one thing. He comes from the organized crime groups of Ukraine. He was made by one of their major people who actually maybe was at the core of it more than anyone else, Kolomoisky, who laundered all their money. Kolomoisky could bury the Biden family and a large number of particularly Democrat American politicians, probably bury most of the politicians in his country. I mean, after all, they've had, 8 prime ministers, and they've had one who's honest, and he lasted for 4 years, and they poisoned him. And this guy doesn't qualify as one of those. The idea of putting sanctions on the wealthy would have to be refined to those that were oligarchs, but that could be the same list. I'm not as familiar. There was a period of time when if you put sanctions on every very wealthy Ukrainian, you would not have made a mistake. They all were crooked oligarchs. The only one who wasn't was wealthy, but not in that category. He had a background in American finance. And as John McCain told me, he was the only hope of Ukraine if Putin let him survive. Well, Putin poisoned him, and he survived, but he didn't survive with the capacity to do all the things he could do before they absolutely ruined him. And he had four disastrous years in office where they ran him. So we have halted intelligence sharing with them. we've halted arms, and we're waiting for Europe to take over. So when Elon was attacked for this, he said, well, come on, you can't say I'm on one side or the other. They wouldn't have been able to even conduct this war if I didn't give them Starlink. Absolutely 100% true. Go back to when he did it and how he was praised for it. And here's a quote from Elon that I think should be put up on the board. What I am sickened by is years of slaughter in a stalemate that Ukraine will inevitably lose. Anyone who really cares, really thinks, and really understands wants the meat grinder to stop. Peace now. Remember all the left-wing peace now groups? They are now war now groups. Except just in Ukraine, which is really money now groups. Because as the war goes on, the money follows it. And it's these guys that he wants to sanction that are, number one, taking the money, and number two, to the extent that the little weasel can be pressuring the little weasel to keep it going. I mean, his performance in the White House was extraordinary. His desire to carry on the war is pathological. And don't tell me I care about his people more than he does. I know that. I talked to people in Ukraine on Friday, and what I'm telling you, I know he got a bump in Ukraine because you protect your country against it. Fine. But there's a substantial number of people in Ukraine, because people in Ukraine are very often very aware of the corruption. They don't hide it. They are very aware of the fact that people are making a fortune off this war, and they don't want it to end. And America won't say it. But in America, we get stupid things in the Wall Street Journal and the Times, and the money is going to the American military-industrial complex. Well, you might as well say the money is going to the Gambino crime family. The American military-industrial complex. It's the reason we have a Foreign Corruption Act, which may not even be constitutional. The Supreme Court says it is. I wonder. We penalize American businesses for paying bribes abroad, which puts them at a disadvantage. But we had to do it because it was so ubiquitous, particularly with arms manufacturers. They're the arms manufacturers and the arms salesmen and the arms companies, these big companies, like McDonnell Douglas was the first one I got involved with. And I actually came to the conclusion that legally they couldn't be prosecuted because the law that made what was illegal came after the time they committed the crime. But they committed the crime. I mean, they were horribly dishonest businessmen. They just, at that point, weren't criminals. And we don't get to prosecute for being a horribly dishonest businessman, but for committing a crime. But I'm an old-fashioned prosecutor, which means I'm the only kind of prosecutor, because an old-fashioned prosecutor follows the law, and a new-fashioned prosecutor goes after political opponents or those that his overseer tells him to do. And that's why some of these guys should go to jail. So they released some of the documents underlying the Adams case. And I want you to know that the two prosecutors who led the quitting in my old district that I ran, and I'm so proud of, Southern New York, who left because the Justice Department dropped the case against Adams because the Justice Department came to the conclusion that it was a political case, not a real one. That internally they took the same position against Williams, who was the very ambitious prosecutor who wants to run for office, who prosecuted Adams. In other words, they were against his doing it. They thought the case looked like a political persecution. That's before they could nail Trump with a bullshit resignation contradicted by their internal words. Shame on them. And shame on the Southern District for having become that. It breaks my heart. Like New York City breaks my heart that the corrupt Democrats are running it. I probably started with Comey. I mean, I don't know what he did in the Southern District. I mean, I remember the Martha Stewart prosecution looking to me like a publicity stunt. Generally, one-time insider trading, civil case. I never did a bullshit case like that. It had to be massive amounts of money, massive amounts of transactions. We didn't have the time for that bullshit. I want you to focus on the fact of how this little weasel in Ukraine is getting his people killed. You know, all of you know, that Ukraine is not going to be able to get Russia out of Ukraine, right? So ultimately, Russia is going to stay in Ukraine for as long as it wants, unless we want to risk a nuclear war. Now, for all of Europe's bull, they don't want to risk a nuclear war. And as has been shown already, the minute we walk away, originally they're going to say, we'll put in troops, we'll put in, and so far, nothing. Macron was going to train troops. Yeah, hell will freeze over before Macron trains troops. And if he did, they'd go the other way. Starmer said he was going to give them British troops, and the British press said, what troops? They all were going to increase their spending from almost nothing to 5%. They still haven't. And if it weren't for the United States, yep, they followed with money put in that they're going to get back. We put in money that he thinks we don't get back. Now, the minute we pulled out, we took off the curtain of deception. And it's a the Wizard of Oz is actually a pathetic old man who doesn't know anything about anything. That's Europe. But if the little weasel had done the only humane and sensible thing to do, knowing now for 2 years that you can't win, which is to stop having your people slaughtered, yeah, billions wouldn't have come to him and the oligarchs. But those people be alive, war be settled. But Biden didn't want that. And who knows best about Ukrainian corruption than whatever Joe can remember in his demented 3 brain cells? Since he put on that ridiculous act, I'm surprised the Academy Award didn't give him the whatever that thing is that they have, that stupid-looking statue, for his act in the White House. But I want you to focus on one other aspect of it. The Russians are now major league attacking Kursk. Kursk is, I'll show you where Kursk is. Kursk is in Russia. It was one of the best things, one of the few positive things in the last 2 years that the little weasel has done. He took some Russian territory. Yeah, not a lot. But it gives you something to trade for your territory. It's even like a face saver for Putin if Putin has to give something back, which I believe from what Trump is saying can happen. Now, Zelensky doesn't talk at all. Notice Zelensky, he talks about safety guarantees and money and everything. Doesn't talk about getting any territory back. Why? I don't know. I know there's a corrupt reason for it, but I don't know what it is. When he took Kursk, which is almost a year ago now, when he took Kursk, I said, hey, this is smart. And I don't say that often about this little weasel. I know him, when he got elected, and he double-crossed me and the president before he got into office. And I know that he's sitting on top of major corruption in my country and his country, and a guy like that is totally corrupt. So when he was in charge of the war, I said to myself, oh my God, these poor Ukrainian people. He's just he'll as long as he can make money, he doesn't give a damn if his people die. And I'm going to prove that to you right now. I'm going to prove it to you because I don't want you to even just think I'm just saying it. I'm going to show you how he is getting his people killed when he doesn't have to. So let us look. Oh, here he is. Let's take a look at him. sometimes when you look at a man, you can get an idea of what he's like. So there he is. That's him right there. We don't know that's when he was mouthing off to the president and vice president. What I really wanted was Vance to stand up and tell him to shut up. And we could see the difference in we could see the difference in the two of them, but we didn't get that. There were. Oh, no. Take off the screen. Take off the screen. I'm going to find something better to show them that I have to. Okay, this is not the best one, but it'll do. All right, here goes. Okay.
You want a map?
Yeah, I want to show them what we're doing here. Now. Uh-oh, I don't have my white thing. I can do it without that, I think.
You like a poker? No,
I want you to look at the map, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to look at the dark. I want you to look at the dark area. The dark area in that the brown, I don't know what you would call that color. That's the area that Russia has now taken. That area is what I would call and others would call the road to Crimea. See Crimea at the bottom there? Right down there. There's Crimea. Okay? You can see that. Now now you can go through here. And there you are. That's why the battles that were important. You might remember them. Donetsk, Mariupol, down on the sea, because they want to keep. Look what they've done. They have limited greatly Ukraine's access to the sea. And in fact, I'm surprised they didn't take this. Only access they have is here from Kherson to Odessa. That's Ukrainian. That's access to the sea. If they were to move into Odessa and take Odessa and down to here, they would then control and make Ukraine a landlocked country. But Ukraine now has this to utilize. Or they could have taken it and given it to Moldova, which is a sympathetic ally. Now, last year, instead of fighting to take some of this back, which they do occasionally, take some of this back, right? They did something very, very shrewd. They went over the border here because they saved Kharkiv, which the Russians wanted. Russians wanted this. And ultimately, they wanted this, Kiev. They went over the border and they took this area of Russia. I'm making it bigger than it is, but it's a pretty decent area. It's not a very meaningful area, except in a more than symbolic sense. Russia has not been invaded since Germany did it. Hasn't been invaded at all during the Cold War. Russian territory hasn't been taken away. And Kursk is now under the control of the Ukrainian government. And they have fought off 3 attempts to take it back, including the latest 2 with the help of the North Korean troops, which may have been a detriment rather than a help. In the last week, the Russians have been brutally attacking Kursk and making great advances. And people think it can last about a week. And the Russians will take it all back and kick them out. In addition to getting people killed that shouldn't get killed because you can have a peace right now, he just gave up his only card. When the president said you had no cards, he should have said, well, you got one, Kursk. You could say to Putin, give me some of this. Give me some of this here. And kind of cut out half here. There's only about 2% of what you got. But and particularly in here, right? I'm going to tell you why. Remember, the deal that Trump wants to make is for rare minerals. Well, these are the minerals that are necessary for our military and high-tech competition with China, which China has a almost control of, or did. And we're slowly prying it away from them. And Trump has made, in the course of the first 2 months, some great deals to do that. Well, Ukraine has a lot of rare minerals. I am told, not an expert, but I had this confirmed by Kazakh and Polish scientists, or whatever you call people who know about minerals in the earth. 2/3 of what we need and want is in the Ukrainian, fairly safe portion of Ukraine. 1/3 is in this area right here. And that's why the Russians took it. If you said, I'll give you this for that, Ukraine wins that. Russia gets back a fairly non-productive region of Russia, gets rid of the indignity of a country occupying them. And the Ukrainians get roughly half of the wealth of that area, big wealth over the next 20 years of that area, and gets to make the deal with the US. Now, Putin, unacknowledged by the Western press, because the Western press doesn't tell you anywhere near the truth, Putin, in the middle of the contretemps with Zelensky, made a statement through, I don't know if it was attributed to him or one of his very high officials. And he'd be willing to make it, if it doesn't work with the little weasel, we'll make a deal with you. What is he talking about? He's talking about he'll make a deal with the United States to give us half of that if we do a joint finance agreement with him. Because he knows that if the U.S. invests in this and you give up 50%, your 50% is going to be worth 200%. Because the U.S. is 5 times the economic power of Ukraine and Russia combined, has access to markets that they would never dream of. So think about it. You'd say, how can I give away half of what I have and I make more money? Well, it happens all the time if you make a good deal. Because the ability to sell those minerals, if Russia controls it, is nothing compared to the 10 times greater range America would have. Putin is smart enough and independent enough to figure that out. Now, I'm not saying that the little weasel is not smart enough to do it. He's just got a whole new ball game. He doesn't want America involved because he might have to act honestly. You get involved in a financing deal with the U.S., now you're going to come under the SEC, and God Almighty, the SEC in Ukraine would be the biggest agency in government. It'd be like picking chickens out of a chicken coop, or shooting chickens in a chicken coop.
Fish in a barrel.
Fish in a barrel, whatever you want. I could take the most inexperienced lawyer, train him in 2 days, and you make 5,000 cases in Russia. They have no laws. No laws. And the ones they have, they don't enforce. Please, there are many people in the world that are wonderful people and live under this kind of stuff. This is not an attack on the Ukrainian people. If anything, it's a plea to help them, but to realistically help them. Giving them money to continue a war, objective of which is to just get them killed for nothing and make money for the already horrible criminals that run them, is disgusting. And to continue this war and jeopardize your one selling point that you could use for your people to get something valuable for them, because you want to continue to have those crooked oligarchs rake in money and be uncontrolled. Even if they're not raking in money, to be uncontrolled is disgraceful. And America shouldn't be on that side. And thank God for Trump and Vance and Musk for having the guts to see through it. And shame on the people who play this game who, 5 years ago were more than willing to tell you that Ukraine is one of the 2 or 3 most corrupt countries in the world. Now you never hear that, right? Although there was an article in one magazine the other day, and we showed you the headline of it, that said that Ukraine is without any doubt too corrupt to get into the EU or NATO. There used to be restrictions. Italy had to clean up the mafia to remain in the EU. Jesus, this Ukraine makes the mafia look like small time. The whole country is corrupt. Every level. I'm telling you, when I went there, first time I asked John McCain, who could I trust? He said no one except Yushchenko. And you know what happened to him? So, man shot near the White House. Looks like it's nothing but craziness. However, this is a matter of concern. 2 air scares near Mar-a-Lago, including one on Sunday, yesterday. Air Force F-16 fighter planes were scrambled. An aircraft entered the airspace near Mar-a-Lago, and this is the second time it happened in 48 hours. They don't tell you any details about who the 2 people were or the people involved in both. So I can't give you a conclusion from it. I told you about the 2 prosecutors, Danielle Sassoon and Hagen Scotton. Both Sassoon and Scotton had privately questioned the motives of the official who brought the case, former U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, meaning that the motives were political. And then, of course, they went into shocked whatever, that the case was dropped because it was a political prosecution. They seem to have had the same doubts. Cuomo's going to be put under investigation by a House subcommittee for the 15,000 people he allegedly had killed by putting them in nursing homes, who were his biggest contributors. No one points that out about their being his big contributors. And President Trump has deported Mahmoud Khalil. He hasn't been thrown out yet, but he's been put under order of deportation. He was the ringleader of the anti-Semitic protests at Bernard in Colombia that went on last year, the one financed in part by the Jewish hater Soros. Now accuse me of being anti-Semitic for saying that, and then listen to my answer, okay? Come on, accuse me. Accuse me of being anti-Semitic because I'm attacking a guy who has done probably more to have Black Americans killed than anyone in recent time, and someone that sold out his own people. Come on. An awful lot of people got intimidated by that they almost fainted on Fox once. We'll find you the episode where I think Newt Gingrich accused him of being anti-Israel. And they said, it could be anti-Semitic. Let's stop. And they stopped the show. Soros obviously was pulling Rupert Murdoch's strings at one point. But simple fact is there's the 60-minute tape, and it proves what you need to know. And his activities prove even more. So this movement run by Mahmoud Khalil is definitely a terrorist aider and abetter. Hamas is on the terrorist group. That's who they are demonstrating for. I don't know how you get to demonstrate for a terrorist group on a campus, unless the campus agrees with the terrorist group, which is the reason why so far 400 million has been taken from Colombia. The government, I think, gives one altogether, this could be over a period of time, has about $1.5 billion committed to this communist institution of low learning. It should be all taken out. I mean, that money, this is Doge money. I don't know, gee, give it to poor people. All you've done is educate a generation of anti-American, American-hating Marxists. I don't even know if it's worth telling this story, but there's a Netflix reality show called Love is Blind. Now, I have never seen it, nor do I intend to see it, even now, with this fairly interesting development. But the two people See if I could. I don't know if I have their picture. I don't. Thank God. I'm glad I didn't. No, this group. An oncology nurse named Sarah Carlton is on this show, and as a result of whatever they did in this season 8 of Love Is, it's been on 8 years. Never heard of it. See how pure I am from all that crap. That's why I have a good mind. I don't waste it with this crap. She and this gentleman, Ben Mazenga, fell in love. And they're going to get married on the show, which is a big thing. You know, that everybody, believe it or not, I used to do weddings on Valentine's Day on Regis Philbin and Kathy Lee's show. Because I love them both. I do. I love them both, as well as Kathy Lee's now deceased husband, Frank Gifford. Of course, I rooted for the Giants, but he's a great guy, and she's a wonderful woman, and nobody funnier than Regis. But I used to come on. I did about 5 of them. You know, it was sponsored by someone, and you'd win the wedding, and then they'd send you on your honeymoon, and they'd give you gifts, and they'd give you a trousseau, and all this stuff. So these guys had the wedding all planned, right? They had the wedding; it was all planned, and it was going to be done, you know, big time, really big time. So she announces, I don't know if she did it right on the show, live or in advance. You probably can figure that out. I wasn't going to put on clips of this because I don't want to. I don't want to disgrace our show with some kind of reality TV crap, which I consider most of it complete, absolute crap. But this is her statement. I don't know if she delivered it live or she wrote it. She probably can't write it. She probably can't write. So I'm sorry, but I don't want to be misunderstood. I still love you, and everything about you is amazing, and I care about you so much. However, she can't marry him because, step back, get ready, he's too woke. The guy is too woke. Basic issues. Well, first of all, she always wanted a partner to be on the same wavelength as her. And that would mean in favor of a cop killing Black Lives Matter. She wanted somebody who believes pigs in a blanket fry them like bacon. Probably she wanted it recited as part of the wedding vow. Who believed in gay marriage and believed in the vaccine. Now, he's a conservative Christian, they say. And he says, I love you, but I have different views on these things than you do. And now she's not going to marry him, even though they set up this wedding. And then the Fox News anchor, Laura Ingraham commented as follows: let's find him a nice conservative 20-something girl rather than this girl who needs a nose job. I put that in. She needs a nose job. She's a good-looking girl, but she needs a nose job. He dodged a bullet, Tommy Lahren said. And they believe this was a setup, that she never intended to marry the poor guy anyway. And by the way, they said, one of the commentators on Fox said, well, maybe it's just he's not good looking enough. I think he's better looking than she is, but I don't think this goes on looks. It goes on who's a rotten piece of crap and who's a real human being. Come on. You know the guy doesn't agree with you on politics. You know that that's going to be a barrier. And then you do this whole big thing so you can, I don't know how much they get paid, but these reality TV people get paid a bundle for having zero talent and usually a totally fucked up personality and life. They're all going into drug rehab and getting divorced and hanging around with this and doing that and going to jail. And this is what we display instead of Ozzie and Harriet. Or Father Knows Best. My God, that would be thrown off the air in a second just with the title. Black Lives Matter would prefer, we don't need a father. Father Knows Shit would be the show that Black Lives Matter would sponsor. Oh, and Mother too, after 2 years old, because the child is the property of the state. Well, Rudy has talked too much tonight. That's because he missed you all weekend. We had a very productive weekend in making our point about Iraq. We had a great conversation at Mar-a-Lago, which we'll tell you more about tomorrow. And we'll see something big's going to happen this week. I think. Like another night to sleep on it and whatever else I do. Okay? And we'll talk about it tomorrow night. And remember, 7 o'clock, we start with the Rudy Giuliani Show. And at 8 o'clock, we go into America's Mayor Live. And then something that has no name other than soccer time. Right, Ted?
Which we may soon be folding, maybe expanding the show maybe to 2 hours, because soccer time is soccer time, because we never know how much time there is.
You know what I have a great desire. You know what I have a great desire to do, boss? I'm going to tell you. I have a great desire to do my old podcasts again. I think I can manage 2 a week.
Absolutely.
Maybe 1.
We could almost film.
And I would like to do that there. I'd like to do more in-depth concentration on a particular issue. Like, what exactly is the condition of persecution of Christians right now?
Right.
How bad is it, and how much covered up is it? And how much does the Chinese infiltration of America, its media, Hollywood, and its government have to do with the fact that we cover up persecution of Christianity? Because the religion they fear the most is the Christian religion, because it's the biggest. They don't fear Muslims as much. They fear certain groups of Muslims, like the Uyghurs, but they're more than willing to make alliances with other groups like Iran, who thinks like they do. Massive killing of people. So I am fairly convinced that we're their biggest target. That if they had to eliminate one group, it'd be us. Now, when we move over to the Middle East, the biggest target are the Jews, more than us, because it isn't as strategically thought out. It's the result of 2,000 years of hatred, bigotry, reinforced by Muhammad. That's a tough one to solve, but we're on the verge of solving it. And the answer is, do we have what it takes to get rid of that government? I know we don't want to be in the business of getting rid of governments, but if somebody didn't want to be in the business of getting rid of governments, and they said to you in 1933, you can get rid of Hitler, and you didn't do it, well, you should be burning in hell. With that thought, pray for the people of Israel and pray for the people of Ukraine, who are needlessly dying now because of the little weasel. Pray for the people of Iran, who are needlessly under this horrible dictatorship, because I believe they could be liberated with a couple of steps. And in America, we should pray and thank God for what he's given us, and even how he bailed us out. So we'll be back tomorrow night, and God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them, And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze, we are able to apply our God